Hello, Fearless Gamers, Matt here for Fearless Games, and welcome to another episode of The Joy of Painting Minis. Today is a really special one. I've been looking forward to this episode for such a long time, because we're going to be painting an Armorcast Phantom Titan. This model is the crown jewel of my collection. It is just probably the coolest thing I've ever seen. When I first saw this model, I've always said, "Oh, I wish I could have one of these things." It's one of the first original Titan models that were designed. It was made in the USA when GW had commissioned US companies to make epic scale Titans and tanks for them. And it's just been this model I've been dreaming to see fully painted and used in an APOC game at one point. And today we're finally going to paint it. So before we get started, just a couple of things. First and foremost, I do apologize for the odd camera angles and possibly some unseen action in some shots. I'm still learning the space that I'm working in currently and trying to find the best setup to work with my airbrush and get the camera at the right angle where it sees everything, and also lighting the space to make it where it's visible, you can see everything going on. So I do apologize if at any time there's some parts where I'm blocking the action. It's a work in progress in getting the right setup for painting sessions that involve the spray booth, so I do apologize for that. And also, some of you who may have owned an Eldar Phantom Titan or have seen pictures of one from Armorcast may notice there are some differences in this model. The person that I had purchased it from had made some minor alterations. They added this weird clear acrylic piece to under what I believe is called the heat lance to give it this, I guess they were trying to make it look more like 3rd or 4th edition Eldar minis. So he added that piece to it, or he just wanted it to stand out. I have no idea. I never bothered asking the guy because I didn't realize it was an alteration until after the fact. And on the right shoulder fin, the original owner had cut off what looks to be like the Melta Flamer weapon that was on there, and attached this combo piece that was all resin casted, so I'm not sure if it was part of a model at one point, because I did find some pictures of the Phantom Titan with this on it, but with a slightly different shoulder design. So if anyone knows, feel free to drop a comment. But it looked like a Dark Reaper cannon that angled and pointed at a fire prism crystal. Looking at it, I could see, later on I could see that he had sawed off the original gun and added those pieces to it. So I removed those, and using FreeCAD designed a flamer weapon head that looked as similar to the original one that I could find in pictures, and making my best guess on how big it was and all the different measurements, and then resin printed it and attached it to it. So you may notice these slight modifications to the Titan, but that's the explanation for that. And let's not waste any more time and dive into this episode of The Joy of Painting Minis.
In today's video, we'll be using the following colors. Feel free to paint along using these, or swap them out for your regular army colors. We will be using a modified version of GW's painting method, whereas we'll be priming the model, then applying a base paint, followed by a layer, followed by a highlight. The one step we will be skipping is the wash stage. After priming the model, we loaded up our airbrush with our armor's primary base color, which is Cantor Blue. We're going to try and get as little of this color on parts of the model we don't want to be the main armor color to make painting the rest of the model a lot easier later. I like to take this stage of the project as an opportunity to fine-tune my brush control and get an idea of what my spray range is like and how many passes it takes to get a nice even coverage. When we finish with one piece, we'll move on to another part of the Titan, giving each layer of paint a chance to dry before moving on to the next color. Once all the pieces have been painted, we can move on to our layer color, the Fang. When applying this, we need to make sure we are aware of the shape of the model, leaving some areas left as Cantor Blue to help give it a defined shape, as well as a look of shadows being applied to the model. I personally find this effect is a lot easier to achieve with an airbrush, because as you pull away from the model, you can get a nice gradient effect where the two colors meet. And since the airbrush gives off this nice feathered edge to its paint lines, that effect of the color shifting into the shadows just looks so much better, and it's much easier to achieve than with a painting with a brush, at least for me. The hard part that I find is defining where the light is falling on the model to create these shadows and keeping that choice consistent. Since this model is being done in parts, I always have to remember where each part sits in relation to each other to keep those shadows consistent throughout. And another thing to remember when using an airbrush is to not sit in one place for very long, or you're going to risk a buildup of paint which will leave ripples on the finish, ruining our nice smooth surface. Now that our primary color has been painted, we can move on to our secondary armor color. For this, we're going to need to mask off the areas we've previously painted to ensure that we don't get any of this color on those parts. It's also very important that we give the model plenty of time to dry before applying the tape, because if we don't and we put it on too soon, we'll risk the paint peeling off when we remove the tape later. As we did before, we're going to coat every part of the model we want to be this secondary color, making sure to get a nice even coat. For this particular color, we need to be extra careful of how long we're sticking to one area or how many coats we apply, because as this color builds up in layers, it gets darker and darker. And I don't want this color to get too dark, or else when we try to apply the top color, the transition between the two is going to be so sharp that we're not going to really get a nice gradient effect like a color shifting from the dark to light areas. And it's just going to look a little too comic booky for my taste. Now that our base color of Hexed Lichen has dried, we can now apply a coat of Warlock Purple. This part of the project probably cost me the most time for multiple reasons. First of all, the area I was working with was much smaller, so I had to be much more precise with my application to make sure that the color transition between the two colors was nice and smooth. Another thing that caused me to take so much time was halfway through I ran out of Warlock Purple. And when I went to the store to pick up more, I discovered that he stopped carrying the Air line of colors, and that Vallejo had changed the paint formula, and it appeared like Warlock Purple had gotten darker. This made me very concerned because I was worrying I was going to need to redo the entire project just to make sure that the color matched. And another challenge was trying to find a company that not only sold the Air version of the paint, but sold it at a reasonable price. Finally, I was able to find someone who was selling it for a reasonable price, got the paint, and again, comparing it to my old bottle, it appeared as if the color was much darker. But after doing some test applications, I found out that they both dried exactly the same, so with that concern taken care of, I was able to get this project back on track and continue with the model painting. Once the Warlock Purple has dried, I went and masked these areas off to keep them safe from our third color, which is going to be Earth. This will be the base for all of our Wraithbone color areas of the model. Now, unlike all the other colors we've been applying thus far, the next two that are used for the Wraithbone areas will not be applied with the airbrush. Instead, we'll be applying these by hand once we've finished up using the airbrush. And once the earth color has been applied, we can now move on to our tertiary armor color, which is orange. Thankfully, as we've been going on, the areas that we need to apply paint to have been getting smaller and fewer. So, as we've been moving, our progress will get faster and faster, which is a great motivator to keep going when working on such big projects like these. The first thing we are going to have to do is apply Evil Sun Scarlet to all the areas we want to be orange to be our base color / shadowy areas. But once again, we got to make sure that we mask off all the surrounding areas to protect the paint jobs we've already done. And once this color is dried, we'll then apply the main color, which is Troll Slayer Orange. This paint is going to require multiple passes because orange is such a thin color. And in my opinion, I find it much more annoying than painting yellow in all honesty. And once the orange is done, we can then add a very small highlight of yellow to the very middle of this piece to help emphasize the curved shape of the head. Now we only have one area left to paint, and that is the eye lenses, or in this case, eye lens, since he's only got one. This is probably the most technical of all the areas we have painted with the airbrush because it's going to require mixing of colors to get the effect we want. We're first going to apply a base coat of electric blue, and you'll notice I didn't mask off the surrounding areas. This is because I want some of this paint to spill over to the surrounding area to give it a bit of a glow effect. And to help achieve this, I'm going to start adding white to the electric blue. First, I'm going to add just a small amount to give me a mixture that's 2 parts blue and 1 part white. Then I'm going to add a little bit more white to give us 1 part white to 1 part blue. Then I'm going to add a little more white to give us 2 parts white and 1 part blue, and then finally just pure white. Each time, I'm going to be pulling the color closer and closer to the middle of the eye area, as well as also reduce how wide this color band is. And if done right, what will happen is all the colors will mix and blend together with each other to give this seamlessly transition, giving us a nice glow effect. Now that all of this is done, all the colors have dried, we can do one of the most satisfying things when using an airbrush, and that is pulling off all the masking tape to reveal our finished work. I don't know about you guys, but I always love this part. Just something about the paint coming off, the tape coming off and showing these nice clean lines. It's just so amazing and just so satisfying to watch. With all that done, we are so close to finishing up this model. All we have left to do is apply some Xandri dust and Ushanti bone in the areas we painted earth using a dry brush technique to try and give this a more organic look. Once we finish painting all the wraith bone, we're going to go ahead and add some black to all the parts of the model that kind of look like padding, as well as all the joint areas on the model as well. And after that, we just go back and check up on any areas that we may have had any chips from removing the masking tape from, or any areas where we accidentally got the wrong color on, and tidy those up to make it all nice and uniformal. After that, we just apply transfers as we see fit on the model, and finish it all up with a top coat to protect the model's paint job. And with that, the model's now finished, and I can't be happier with how this model came out. It just looks so amazing fully painted, and I cannot wait to use it to wipe my foes away. You can find more pictures of this beast over on our Instagram page, link in the description. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, Fearless Gamers, take care!